So this week we are going to be moving into still lifes, and we're going to start with elliptical still lifes, and all of these are going to be done in cross contour. So before we get to actually drawing objects, I encourage you to do a little exercise here where we draw ellipses and we look at them both above and below eye level. So I drew a line here showing where my eye level is. And an ellipse looking straight on is going to be flat, but as it moves below or above, but I'm showing here moving below eye level, it is going to get rounder. Um, and that means the angle of the ellipse is going to open up larger and larger. Eventually, it would become a circle if you're looking directly down on it. Um, so let me show this again. Um, with the eye level more in the middle of the picture plane, so that you can see that both above and below of the eye level or the horizon line, that your ellipses are going to open up, and also just kind of practice, working ellipses. That just kind of freeing up your hand and going numerous times. It doesn't Next, I'm going to show you some problems I see a lot of students have with ellipses. So this first one, the ellipse is pointed on the edges, or it's too rounded and not squared off on the edges. You really want to make sure you have a nice, clean, perfect ellipse. Other things is students often show the ellipse rim of a glass or something as being the same size all the way around, whereas actually the back of it is going to be smaller than the front. So practice also, like we did, some cylinders, showing how um, that cylinder opens up and is wider as it is further away from your eye level or the vertical axis. Um, and Also, we're going to be adding cross contours. So you're adding lines that show the curve and show the kind of the horizontal. So the reason that you do that, so let's look at this. If I'm looking at a cylinder, and if I draw straight lines on it, it doesn't show that curve. So I have to show curved lines to get that illusion. And when I do verticals on a cylinder, the lines that are closer to the edge are going to be closer to each other. On the top, it will be coming out from from the center radius. Um, and so practice these a few times, showing the cross contour, and again showing that the edges are a little closer lines, whereas the middle of the cylinder is further apart. And then you can start to imagine things that have you know inside shapes. And then this bottle, I'm going to do a bottle here. You're going to also have to show curves, and everything on both sides of that center axis line needs to be symmetrical. And so, really the idea here, even with if you're drawing a sphere, you're going to have cross contour showing that. And eventually this will develop into shading. So the first example of a still life is going to be some toilet paper rolls, and I'm going to photograph it from a few different angles so that I can kind of compare and decide on which angle I want to choose. So this one I'm going to actually do a preliminary sketch, um, just to practice. I strongly suggest doing a little practice before you actually do the drawings that you turn in. So this one, you can see I drew these directional lines showing my perspective, and then added the cross contours into it last. And then I'm going to do it again, and here I'll show you the full process. So here I start with some directional lines, kind of laying out, where, which direction the rolls are pointed, and thinking also about where my vanishing points might be, um, in giving it perspective. And then I'm kind of laying in my contours lightly, and notice how I am working very light, and eventually I will darken these lines when I feel confident about their proportions and angles. And it is a process of drawing and erasing and then redrawing to find the right size, right shape, everything. And so lightly kind of just building those elliptical lines, um, because it's hard to draw a perfect circle, so it takes a little kind of trial and error, and getting it right where you want it. And then I'm also going to go in and draw the interior of the roll as well, and come in and kind of clean things up, and then really define my contour lines. The contour lines refer to the outside lines. The cross contour refers to the lines that are inside, that kind of grid-like lines that lay across and lay across the objects and give them their form and shape. And so now that I've got my contour lines pretty well established, I can go in and start to depict exactly what the cross contour is going to look like. And so I do that. My vertical lines, I'm going to use a ruler. And again, notice how the lines closer to the edges are closer, and the ones in the middle of the cylindrical shape is a little further apart. And this is going to show that curve um, uh, in that direction. And I'm going to even include these lines inside the rolls of the toilet paper. Um, and then on the tops of the cylinders, everything's coming out from my center. It's showing the radius of the cylindrical object. And then I also would like to see some lines showing the kind of the base of what they're sitting on, showing the wall behind as vertical lines, showing the the surface that they're on in 2-point perspective. And here I'm even just going in a little bit more and adding some value. You don't have to add value this week, but it is nice to kind of start to consider how you would add value in this cross contour direction. And you'll find that when next week when we really get into value, that you can show this form and direction in your value that you add later. So there's the drawing complete. And so then the next one I'm going to do is going to be some coffee. And here I'm going to look at a number of different angles. I'm actually going to draw this a couple different times of the various different angles. And so this first one is just kind of a quick sketch, and just kind of laying out my composition, how I want to fit it in. And I realize actually I want to kind of look into it more. So look into the cup a little bit more, look from above a little bit higher. And so the next one, again, do a kind of a preliminary sketch. And here I'm actually putting my objects into cubes and boxes. That's a great way to kind of lay out your composition before you actually go ahead and work on a completed drawing. lay out the composition with boxes so that you know that you have your placement right, and um, it will save you a lot of time, rather than, it will help you fit your objects into where you want them. So here I'm doing it again where I'm laying in um, these kind of cubes, and really light, and because I'm going to end up erasing those lines later, but having these shapes as though these imaginary boxes that I fit the objects into does allow me to get my composition and placement more correct. Um, and so coming in and just uh, kind of working with those and lightly, if I work light, I can erase it. If I work light, I can kind of play around and look at where objects are to one another, and get a feel for it. You're not going to get it right exactly the first time, so it's good to kind of have this ability to push and pull, and to be able to erase and remove um, when things don't feel like they're the right shape or in the right place. And then now that I've got my composition kind of laid out, I'm going to go in and start to define my contour lines a little bit better. So define the lines in the background and show the perspective of the stove top and the countertop. Um, and this helps me kind of get a better feeling of, um, you know, that they're in a place and that they're situated. They're not just floating in air. Um, and so, including the actual stove and everything in the background too. And this just allows me to really build a composition. All right, so now I'm adding a little detail. Um, don't get too worried about detail, but here I'm looking also at kind of coming in and showing the curves, um, and here I'm going to add just a little bit of value, but I really want to see the curves of the coffee pot. Um, and and then I'm also going to do the vertical lines, but notice that they're at an angle because the filter is at an angle. The tea kettle is curved, so I'm going to show that curve both vertically and horizontally. So you're really kind of building this idea of the shape through just lines, and and those cross contours, are going to help you get a better sense of the form of objects, both how they come towards you, how they are aligned vertically, and so forth. So, and notice on the saucer that I'm drawing my lines out from the center, and the center is going to be a little bit further back. It's not going to be right in the middle. It's because of perspective. It's going to kind of sit further towards the back of the ellipse. And here I'm coming in and adding some cross contour to the base on the countertop, and then finally I'm taking it just a little bit step further, adding a little bit of value, but drawing that value again in the cross contour. And so I'm not expecting much value this week, um, but I am just kind of demonstrating this so that you can see how I shade things in the direction of the cross contour, and how it helps create that illusion of form and depth and shape and so forth. All right, and then just finally adding a little bit of details in the background, and that's all I'm looking for this week is really just the lines. And so here is the finished drawing uh, as I'm expecting it. Okay. All right, the just kind of coming in, kind of cleaning. I'm actually pulling out a little bit of highlights and so forth. So there you go. And there's the completed drawing. So the last still life I'm going to do for you this week is some glassware. And so the second drawing I want you to do and the A2 drawing I want you to do, I want you to have like 7 to 9 objects. Uh, and so here I've got 7 glasses. I'm going to draw these glasses. Notice I'm drawing um, some directional lines to the vanishing point, which is since I'm looking down, it's going to kind of be below my picture, and I'm actually taping it to another piece of paper so that I can run those lines um, as guidelines back to the vanishing points. And one thing I do is I figure out what the center line is for each of these objects, each of these glasses. And that allows me to make sure that they're symmetrical on both sides. They need to have the same shape, both on the left and the right of each object. And so essentially, uh, finding the center allows me to make sure that the distances on both sides is the same. Like the stems in the glasses are directly in the middle. And now that I've got my composition laid out nice and light, going in and defining the contours, and then now adding the cross contours. And again, notice how along the edges on the sides, the lines are much closer than they are in the middle. And also, I'm drawing these lines, especially on the straight glasses. I'm drawing them directly back to my vanishing point. And then for the base of the glasses, I'm drawing them out from that center point. For the curved glasses, my lines are going to be curved as well. And so make sure that you show that curve, both vertical and horizontal. And then last, I'm just going to add in a base to my other vanishing point. So last, I'm going to show you some examples of students' work in the past. And so you'll notice that they start with drawing boxes. So these were actually very quick drawings done in class that were maybe 10 or 20 minutes long. And so I encourage you to actually practice doing some of this before you do your actual drawings that you submit. Some quick sketches to kind of just lay out the composition. Just extra practice is going to help you. Will save you a lot of time when you get to your actual drawings, and it will kind of help you feel the relationship of objects to one another, the relationships. Notice, there's overlapping, so objects are in front of one another. You need to think about that. You also need to think about objects that are closer to you. Their base is going to be closer to you, so you make sure that you don't have any bases that are lower down on the picture plane, but are further back or behind other objects. So that's one thing to keep an eye out for. And then you'll have more time to kind of work on the cross contour, and like these drawings here, these are more of what was submitted as actual projects. And and then you'll notice that you'll even kind of be urged to start to shade a little bit. And I'm not expecting much, but like once you start adding those lines, you start thinking about their values as well. And I also strongly recommend starting with these kind of directional lines. They'll help guide you, make sure that your objects are in place where they need to be. and so forth. But make sure that you do the cross contour. You're adding the both the vertical, horizontal, curved lines on the inside. These imaginary lines, they're going to give your objects a lot more shape.